All right, we now welcome friend of the program and Penn State fanatic Chris Alphen. Penn State riding one of their best seasons in school history, so we did want to get Alf here onto the program to talk a little bit about them. But do us a favor, Alf, before we get into the questions, can you give the theater goers and even Taylor, who just met you about a minute ago, give some of them the context about your Penn State fandom?
Hey, first of all, thanks for having me. A big fan of the show. Always wanted to be a part of theater, and I'm happy to be here. What my fanhood of Penn State basketball has been like, it's been torture. There's been nothing but losing. We lose all the time. And I've been a fan when my team has lost. I'm not a bandwagon fan. I've gone to games by myself when I was a college student back in 2011. Well, the last time they made an NCAA tournament, and they haven't made an NCAA tournament since. But I've been rooting for them all along, and this is our year. We're second in the Big Ten. It's unbelievable.
You know, I appreciate you going right off the bat with how tormented you've been. I was thinking more along the lines of, well, I went to school here, and then ever since I've been set up my own tailgate, things like that. But, I mean, that's a deep-rooted hurt that it seems like you have with Penn State basketball.
I love college basketball, but it's always been kind of tough to be a fan of college basketball when my team wasn't a top team, when they weren't a top 25 team, when they were in the bottom of the Big Ten. There was no excuse for Penn State basketball to be as bad as they have been for the last 10 years. We're a major Big Ten school with the best athletic facilities in the country. And we're an hour and a half away from Philadelphia, one of the greatest cities for producing high school basketball players. And we've never been a basketball school. And I've always been a basketball fan.
Yeah, that's a tough. You're like one of. There's at least dozens of you as basketball fans at Penn State that's their number one. You know, can I bring the show together as to why this works out so well that you're on a show with some Arizona alumni? That 2001 team lost to Temple, sadly, in the NCAA tournament. Subramanian, can you tell me in what arena Penn State lost that 2011 game in the second round to Temple?
Was that in McHale?
McHale Center in Tucson, Arizona. So that's how we're going to bring this all together here, us Arizona and Penn State guys. But I'm glad you brought up what you just brought up because, you know, I've never thought of Penn State as a basketball school, obviously. But I'm thinking back over my years as a basketball fan, and I'm like, well, they had to have snuck in there a couple times, you know? And when I pulled up their Wikipedia today to say, all right, how many tournament appearances does Penn State have? I'm thinking, you got to have thrown a couple dozen in there. And I'm like, seven entire tournament appearances for Penn State basketball. I was shocked personally because, like I said, I don't think of them as basketball school. But, I mean, you've kind of already shared your feelings, but, like, maybe you can share, like, what's the feeling around the Penn State program that this is, the best, the highest they've been ranked, is it ever? Or at least close to ever? At what are they, 12 or 13 right now?
I think it might be. They had a team in the 90s that made an Elite Eight run, but that was it. We won the NIT in 2009, and we won the NIT in 2014, 2016, and other than that, zero NCAA appearances since Coach Pat Chambers was hired.
Yeah, like how does a guy last? Maybe just because it's a non-basketball school, so to speak. But like, I have it up in front of me here. They reached number 9 in 1996. So, and this is the first time you guys have been ranked since 1996 as well. But explain to us maybe how does a guy like Pat Chambers, only making one tournament or in 9 years, how does a guy keep his job there? You know, is it just well liked by the fan base, or what are your feelings on
He is not. It's a great question. I don't have the answer for it. And Pat Chambers blocked me on Twitter. I've gone through the years of losing games that we should win, seeing teams that were talented losing games in the second half, And, maybe I said one or two things to him on Twitter, and I'm blocked by Pat Chambers.
So personally, Alphen, you've had a lot of critiques of Pat Chambers this year specifically. Are you singing a different tune, or are you still with it?
I'm still with it. I think this team is very, very talented. I don't think there's any excuse. You have one good year. There's no excuse for the last 10 years of not being at least a decent team. I'm not saying they need to be, a top 20 team all the time. That would be nice. But when you're in the Big Ten, once in a while, you have to make the tournament. I'm saying 1 out of 4 years, not 1 out of 10 years.
So I want to look across the hall at the football program as well. You're obviously a football school, James Franklin, and Franklin always seems so positive. That's kind of, as a neutral fan, that's how I view James Franklin. Pat Chambers gives off a very negative vibe. Can you explain the dichotomy between the two? And I know the fan base is obviously liking James Franklin a little bit more than Chambers, but am I wrong in assuming like one is a lot more positive than the other?
Pat Chambers, he gets so angry during the games. He starts yelling at people and yelling at the players. I don't see how that benefits the team, but it seems like the players actually do like him, just like they like James Franklin. The most important thing, I believe, in a college coach, whether it's football or it's basketball, can you be a great recruiter? I think James Franklin is a terrific recruiter and a terrible coach. I think Pat Chambers is not a very good recruiter and a terrible coach.
Those are you want to have one or the other, right?
Having said that, let's talk about this year's team because they're on a roll. And I'm kind of in a corner where I'm critiquing Pat Chambers, but at the same time, there's no critiquing when you're a top 20 team. And, they're doing what they're doing right now, and it's just unbelievable. It's been an unbelievable trip.
So you mentioned how you used to go to basketball games by yourself. Do you remember where you were at on March 1st, 2011?
That was the NCAA tournament against Temple where they
No, that was the last sellout at Bryce Jordan Arena until this last week where they had their first sellout since 2011. That is awesome.
You're exactly right. And I actually do remember where I was. I was on a bar tour through the streets of State College, and I left the bar tour to go into the game and then rejoin the bar tour.
Yeah, I won't bring up the result of that game, but you were playing number 1 Ohio State at the time. But so I thought it was super interesting. I was going back through the attendance of this year. The previous home game that you guys had before you guys beat Michigan State was against Indiana, and there was something like 8,000 people there. And then you guys go and beat Nebraska and beat Michigan State, and then in a Minnesota game, it sells out. I mean, it doubles the attendance there. Have you gone to any games this year, including recently, or?
No, I think that's a good point about Penn State athletics as a whole, is that there are a ton of students there that love sports. They love the football. They love the hockey. They love professional sports. They're from Philadelphia and they're from Pittsburgh, but they don't show up to college basketball games for some reason. I don't know why, unless they're good. And you're absolutely right to point out that, nobody was really at the games in the beginning of the season. Then they started showing up once they were good. Penn State fans only like good Penn State basketball. They don't show up for the bad Penn State basketball. I also say this, the Bryce Jordan Center, which is the arena which Penn State plays basketball, they recently got rated as the worst Big Ten stadium. And I think that rating was correct. It's not a good stadium. It's not a good place to watch a game.
So, Alphen, what is a good finish for this Penn State basketball team this year? I want you to compare that to what your outlook was back in maybe September versus where we're at right now, leading on the road at Purdue as the number 13 team of the country.
That's a good question. If you asked me at the beginning of the season, I said, if we get selected on Selection Sunday, that is a successful season. I thought this team was going to be good because we had a lot of returning seniors. We had Mike Watkins coming back. And I just thought that this team was just going to play really well. I didn't think they would be a top 15, top 20 team. But now I'm starting to get greedy. Sweet 16, Penn State, that would be a success.
Is it fair? I'm just racking my brain right now, and Taylor, you can help me out. Alphen, you can help me. Are you guys the best team in Pennsylvania? Is it you and or Villanova at this moment right now?
It is, and we're ranked higher than Villanova right now, and that's a big pride of Penn State.
Wow.
Did you ever think that like 3 years removed from Villanova winning 2 championships, that at some point Pat Chambers and Penn State would be ranked higher than Nova this deep into the season?
It's mind-boggling. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. It's awesome.
I hope that the tournament selection committee do you want a Villanova Penn State matchup in the tournament, or would you dread that?
I would love it. I mean, I'm not a Pennsylvania kid. I don't really get tied up into the Pennsylvania rivalry, but I would love that. I saw one projection where we play Temple first round and Villanova the second round. That would be unbelievable.
Oh, it would just be madness in the streets of Philadelphia. That would be awesome. I'd love to be there for that.
But that gets back to my other point, is why are Temple and St. Joe's and Villanova, they have all these great teams. It's because they're close to Philadelphia. They go out and recruit Philadelphia kids. Why can't Penn State get those guys?
You tell me. Why not?
I don't know. And I'll tell you something. Pat Chambers is a Philadelphia guy. He was an assistant for Villanova. He grew up in Philadelphia. He got his first head coaching job at BU. He got to the tournament with BU, and then he came to Penn State. And the idea was he was going to recruit Philadelphia guys. And, this might be the first time where he's put a team together that and all these guys, the majority of them are all from Philadelphia. Some of them are even from the same high school. But that was the idea of getting Pat Chambers, was to recruit Philadelphia guys. And it's been 10 years till it's actually worked.
Yeah, but Pat Chambers is as Pennsylvania as you can get, born in Pennsylvania, played at Philadelphia, coached at Philadelphia and Nova, and like you said, in Penn State. I mean, that is a guy that is Penn State or Pennsylvania through and through. You would think that he would have and he's a young guy too. He got the job when he was 40. You think that he would have a real connection to all the local recruits around there.
Yeah. So, Alphen, right now you're ranked 13 in the country. You're a lock for the tournament. What do you think?
Don't say that because
you're a lock.
Because I'm going to come out of this podcast and then they're just going to lose every game for the rest of the season. That is it. You know that.
No, I don't, because let me tell you what the kiss of Titch is, Alphen. The guest that we've had on this program, Mike Burgomaster, Assistant Director of Basketball Operations for Auburn, they're 21-2 right now. We had them on last year. They went to a Final Four. All right. And then who else? I mentioned
Justin Hasgard,
Rhode Island man. They're making a tear and stampeding towards an NCAA tournament berth when they were supposed to be rebuilding. This is the best thing you could have done. These are the best 30 minutes you can give.
Let me tell you something. I know the history of it. I think the reverse is going to happen, because that's what happens to Penn State basketball, is when things are supposed to go right, they go wrong. That's what I'm used to.
Well, I respect your apprehension. Regardless, I'm still going to ask this question. What do you think is more likely to happen sooner? A Final Four berth or a national title berth in football?
What a great question. More likely to happen, national championship in football. And then after that, and then after that, a Frozen Four appearance by our hockey team. And then a March Madness Final Four by the basketball team. I hope I'm wrong, because this year, I mean, this is the team. Because this team, Mike Watkins is graduating, and and so I don't see how this team could be as good next year. So this is the year that we have to do it.
So is Mike Watkins? If let's say that you guys can make that run this year, is he the key to success, you think, in the tournament?
Mike Watkins is an interesting guy. If you watch him at his best, he is the best center in all of college basketball. He is a difference maker. he is a guy that can win you games in the tournament. The problem with Mike Watkins is that at certain games, he decides not to show up. He does have a history of having some mental issues. He punched a guy in line at a McDonald's once. He has mental issues. And there's times where I feel like the game is too big and he just doesn't show up. My fear is we make the tournament and, Mike Watkins doesn't show up.
He did have, I'm reading it, like he had 17 boards against Nebraska, and there's games that he had 16 boards against Wake Forest, 16 boards against Syracuse. But then 2 games later, he has 4 boards against Yale, of all people, who probably doesn't have a guy over 6'6" on their team. It's interesting you say that, and that's not something I would have noticed without that is, he's kind of all over the place seemingly with his effort. Sometimes he puts up like 14 shots a game. Then the next game he'll go 0 of 3 from the field. That's got wild disparity for a senior of all people, a senior starter on a highly ranked college basketball team.
He is at times awesome. And at other times he just doesn't. It almost looks like a mental thing with him where he just says, this is too tough. I don't feel like playing today.
Well, guy looks like he's damn near 35 years old too.
He does look very old.
That's the thing. I mean, Penn State is an old team. They have, Lamar Stevens, their best player, is a senior as well. You have the graduate student, Curtis Jones, who's also a senior, or his last year of eligibility. So this is kind of it. There is no next year, but, when you have a good year, it always helps the recruiting. So who knows?
So the reason I asked that, I don't know if it's necessarily it. The only reason I say that is because we've seen idiots like George Mason in South Carolina and like Loyola Chicago go to a Final Four. And this is the only sport where psychosis like that really happens. And so I just want to, in all of my years, Alphen, there's a lot of teams that randomly make an Elite 8 run or a Final Four run. I wouldn't strike. I mean, and if you're setting the culture here with Pat Chambers, just maybe a little optimism.
So what you're saying is they're going to be this great team this year, and that's just going to turn them into a great team forever and ever and ever. And we're going to become a basketball school because of this one year. Well, that would be amazing. I don't know if it's going to happen though. I'm like, just 1 year for Penn State. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I hope it is, but I'm just expecting the worst.
Well, speaking of this year specifically, the Big Ten has actually had a great storylines, both good and bad for those teams. You look at Rutgers, they were ranked for the first time in I don't know how long. You look at Illinois. I can't harp on it enough. I'm kissing my own ass, but I chose Brad Underwood as the Big Ten Coach of the Year prior to the season starting. They're making some headway. Michigan State, on the other hand, they were preseason ranked number 1. Now they're not ranked at all as we record this today. Make your case, Alphen, for why Penn State is the best storyline in the Big Ten.
Penn State last year went 7-3 in their last 10 Big Ten games. Before that, I think they were something like 1-10 in their Big Ten games. This team, as good as the Big Ten is, and it's the best conference in basketball. I hope nobody is denying that. It's the best conference in basketball. This Penn State team is the real deal. They have experience, and they have guys that are really into the game. They're really competitive. They care. And, as much as I like to rag on Pat Chambers, he keeps his guys focused, especially at the end of the year. That's kind of where Pat Chambers' bread and butter is. And I kind of get upset with them every year because they say, Pat Chambers, this team is playing so well. Why weren't they playing this well in January? But this team is very dangerous. And this team has won in the tournament when they played in the NIT. And they've made runs in the Big Ten tournament under Pat Chambers. So this team is the best storyline in the Big Ten because everybody else in the Big Ten has had a story. This is Penn State's first story. This is our year.
I love it. Could you imagine if Rutgers and Penn State tie for the Big Ten championship? There would just be anarchy in the Big Ten. I would love it. Maybe this is what makes Penn State a basketball school, though, or at least towards the right direction, is hanging that Big Ten banner in the basketball arena. Maybe that's the one thing that every year now Pat Chambers can point up and say, hey, Michigan State was preseason ranked number 1 in this conference. And who took home that banner? We did. I think this is it. I was mum about Penn State's future before this. I'm fully on board now, just because of you, Alphen. I'm in. I'm fully on board. It's your year. It's your year.
I'm getting too excited. I really don't be talking about this. One game at a time.
I like that approach. So you've spoken to the depth of the Big Ten, and I agree they are the best conference in America. And in the beginning of the year, we saw Michigan State. They didn't necessarily get out so hot, but they were preseason number 1. Michigan and Ohio State absolutely started off on a tear. Be honest with us, Alf. Selfishly, does it feel good? Do you kind of get a Grinch smile seeing Michigan and Ohio State have the wheels kind of fall off right now?
I don't think Michigan State is dead. I can't believe what has happened to Ohio State. And
sorry, I meant to say Michigan. My bad.
Oh, I mean, yes. To answer your question, yes. I mean, I thought in the beginning of the season that Ohio State was going to be the best team in the Big Ten by far. I said, wow, this Ohio State team is unbelievable. And they have just completely dropped off. But Michigan State and Michigan, I don't think that Michigan is a well-coached team. I think they're a talented team. And to be honest with you, I don't think Howard's doing a good job there in Michigan. And Michigan State, they're obviously a well-coached team, and I wouldn't count them out. They're on a slide, but, Izzo will get a team together before the season's over. So I think it's too early to say that Michigan State is going anywhere.
Alfred, you're also a big Boston College Eagle fan, and so obviously the Shark is as well. They've had their struggles over the past few years. It really hasn't been a great college basketball viewing experience for you. I'm glad you have your alma mater in Penn State performing well. Your childhood team, though, what needs to be fixed for them if we pivot to the Eagles?
Boston College needs to take athletic seriously. The students don't show up to the games. They don't care. Nobody cares about about Boston College basketball. I go to games all the time. The stadium is empty. The problem with Boston College is to be a student there, even a student athlete, you actually have to study. And there's a lot of players that aren't interested in playing for schools like that. I mean, they haven't been good since Al Skinner was the coach, and he did a great job recruiting a lot of good players. But then the school said, hey, these guys aren't getting good enough grades, and they started creating standards. And they haven't been, obviously good at all since that point. They're not bad this year, though. I mean, they beat Virginia. They played tough against Duke. I mean, they're decent this year.
So looking back, kind of going back to your Penn State fanhood and all the torture that you've been through, outside of maybe, obviously making the tournament in 2011 is a high point, but do you have a specific favorite memory of Penn State basketball?
Well, they played one tournament in New York City, and I went down there. The Big Ten tournament was in New York City. They did that for 1 or 2 years, and I went to a game, and it was awesome. It was like the feelings of having the Big East tournament there. And now they're playing in Indianapolis again, and I'm not sure why. I think the Big Ten tournament belongs in New York City.
Well, how many more conference tournaments can we get in New York City? Don't we have the A-10, Big Ten, and then obviously the Big East?
Well, that was what was happening, was that some of the games were being played, 2 weeks before the other conferences had their tournaments, because they needed to make arrangements so that both could play in the MSG. But why not the Big Ten? The Big Ten should be playing in the MSG.
You make a case. Who's the Big Ten commissioner? Who would you write your letter to?
There's a new commissioner. I forget his name, but he's brand new, like 2 weeks ago.
All right. Well, I mean, what better way than to rip the Band-Aid off, start knocking on his door?
Kevin Warren. Let's get him on the line here.
He's not going to be as free as he is within his first 2 weeks. I'll tell you.
Right. That's right.
Alphen, I'm going to let you go here on my last two questions. I know, again, you don't want to look forward to the tournament, but I got to ask you these hypotheticals because I don't know the next time Penn State's going to be this good. So let's dream a little. Let's have some fun. Talk to me about, let's say you guys are scheduled for that 1 p.m. game on a Thursday. What's the game plan? Where are we watching? What are we doing?
First of all, I'm gonna put this on the record. If Penn State makes the NCAA tournament, I will be there in person. I will be there.
No,
and it's my understanding that the better seed you are, the more likely you get the regional spots. So you always got to root for your team to get a higher seed so that we can get the East region. So I don't have to travel to California for the game. So
no matter the day, time, location, even round of 64, you're going to be there.
I think one of the rounds is in Spinoak, Washington. I don't think I'll be there, but
Spokane, man.
Some out there on the West
That's
Coast.
That's where my family. I have family there, damn it. And I was gonna offer. I straight up had it pulled up in front of me. I say, hey, you can stay at my aunt's house while you're there, but not if you can't put the right name to the right flight or anything like that, man. Come on.
Yeah, no, I'm from Boston. I think the whole West Coast is just California. Like I have no idea.
Well, you kind of ruined my next question, but let's say, for example, like God forbid you're not able to make it out to those games in person. There's a quick little quiz for you, Alphen, and I'm going to be doing this to the guys as the tournament approaches.
Oh boy!
Off the top of your head, tell me right now, what channel is TBS?
31.
What channel is True TV?
With
the books, baby.
I love that. The C button on Xfinity remote. That's what you need.
There you go.
That's true. That's true. I just want to leave you with this. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. All right? Remember that, Alf.
As long as I know how to grab beers, that's all I need for the tournament.
Boom. There you go.
What a way to end it. Hey, man, I really appreciate you hopping on and talking Penn State basketball. Congrats on a great season thus far. Best of luck moving forward in your fandom, and we'll catch up down the road, all right?
We are
Penn State.
Penn State.
Thanks, Alf.
Guys.